Hi, and welcome to the Diablo podcast. Your home for Diablo tryhards, diehards, casuals, and hardcore and nerd words. I am your host, Xanth, and I am brought to you. I am joined today by my lovely co-host, Nimble,
Oh, hi.
and you heard about him right away. Nerd words.
Hello.
Throwing everybody for a loop today. We are brought to you by
Including
Pure Diablo.
yourself.
I know. We're brought to you by PureDiablo.com, your home for an expansive wiki and ever-growing community, and of course, this podcast. I might be thrown off, guys, because it is our 1 year anniversary. 1 year.
We need a kazoo or something.
Or that
Thank
or
you.
that the meme sound clip of all like the children screaming, "Yay!"
I honestly would think a golf clap would be appropriate. Just
Yeah.
Be good.
It's
somebody else
so
can.
soft
If
that your mic doesn't even pick it up.
Yeah.
Really? I, ah,
Nope.
Or maybe it's just not coming across on Discord and you're recording on your end, but yeah.
well, just imagine a golf clap. Rush, make it happen if you can. Um, but we did it. Mission accomplished. 1 year of talking about Diablo, and I don't see any reason to end it. I don't think we need to call it quits. I think we just keep pushing on. Unlike some of you. No, anybody who's still listening at this point, you're good people. And thank you for anybody who has been along for this whole journey. We will continue to try to get better. Yes, I've seen the comments on Apple. Um, we got to work on our audio. I did it. We're getting there. Go back, watch episode 1. That wasn't great. Um, But we're going to keep focusing on that. And thank you for anybody who is commenting that you've liked this enough that you want to see it get better. That's pretty sweet. So thank you
As
guys
we
for
as I hopefully think that we've made it clear in the last few episodes, we appreciate valid criticism. So please bring it on.
nobody's harsher on us than we are, so don't worry. You're not hurting our feelings. Um, we spend enough time on the internet. We're okay. This is seeming somber. This is wrong tone, isn't it? This is a celebration. We've gone through, we've got a lot of Diablo to talk about, but in all sincerity, thank you both for joining me consistently on this silly endeavor. I believe this is episode 37, which is well beyond what we wanted to cover in a year anyway. The original goal was to do one episode every 2 weeks, right? And then we had to be reactionary. There was all this stuff, and we were just so eager to talk about it. And I kind of suspect that going forward, though, we'll talk about it. I think we might be hitting a bit of a lull for a bit. Um, Plenty to talk about, though. So, gentlemen, what has your recent play been like since we last spoke?
I think for once, Nerdwords has less to say than I do, so take it away.
Yeah. We had the podcast what, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago now at this point.
Mhm.
And we got the news from the campfire chat that we were going to get the patch on August 8th, which felt like a pretty lengthy amount of time. And again, as a Sork main, I was having fun in the season as much as I could. I think we had talked kind of at length about how the season's kind of lackluster, especially with the hearts and things like that, and then piled the changes on top of it. So I kind of took a break. Haven't been playing too much Diablo, mostly because Baldur's Gate 3 just captured me in a big way. I think the game's really cool. Very different change of pace from Diablo, but for D&D fans, like we were talking about, in the pre-show, it was really, it's been a really nice change of pace. Great game. I'm excited to get back into Diablo. I played a little bit of the patch today. Really, I kind of found myself beating my head against a wall a little bit, grinding to 100, and really kind of looking and going, why? Right? I've hit 100 on 2 other characters already in the Eternal Realm. I've already finished the Battle Pass. So why am I like trying to just, you know, bleed my eyeballs out of my skull to hit 100? I can take my time with it. There's plenty of time left in the season and all that stuff. So kind of just took a little break, waited for the XP changes and the Nightmare Dungeon changes and like all that stuff to come through. And obviously the Sork buffs have been pretty nice. But yeah, have not played a ton, but I did jump in for a few hours today and kind of got a feel for the patch, and it's really been it for me for Diablo 4 right now.
Lemel?
Yeah. It's kind of similar. What was it? Since we've recorded the last podcast, I got up to I think like 70, 71, and that's like when the level scaling like really starts going through, kicking in. As well as just having some issues with like because I was playing a minion build with the Necromancer. I almost said Skellymancer, which I guess is what I am. And it's just like kind of like is like wonky, like the not getting upgrades power level isn't kind of like what I had hoped it to be, and so it was just a little bit on the rougher side. So I did take a little bit of a break, and so things have been really ended up being a lot more hectic, like at work and everything this week than I was expecting. So I haven't had as much time to play the patch as I wanted to. I did get on earlier today, and it definitely feels a lot better. The new mob density, especially like in the Hell Tides, was feeling like really good. That you didn't have to like. I felt as if I didn't have to like mount up. I could just walk from like event to event, and there was enough in between them, to actually like make it worthwhile, so to speak. Then I got a whole bunch of Forgotten Souls and such, so I can go back to the Nightmare grind. I got the Battle Pass finished, and I just have I think like two two or three more things that I have to do in order to finish up the seasonal journey, and that's about it.
Well, it's not too bad. I'm kind of in the same boat. I've been playing pretty consistently. Um, Although much like you nerdwords, I've dipped into Baldur's Gate and it is scratching that D&D itch. I frequently am stuck as a DM, so being able to actually play as a character has been very exciting for me because it doesn't happen that often. Um, but in tandem with that, I've still managed to play a lot. I'm still cruising on my hardcore druid. I have an aspirational goal of hitting 100 in hardcore. I don't know if I'm going to get there, uh, but it's a fun chase for me. Um, and then normally when I run on the treadmill, I just kind of choose a different class. I was focusing on Necromancer, and that's still alive. But I jumped in this morning and was playing a sorcerer just to try it. I have not touched a sorcerer um, at all since Diablo 4 was released. I have not played a sorcerer, so it was an interesting change. Then and I still haven't touched a rogue since it released. So there's still a lot more that I want to do. Battle Pass is all finished up, um, so I feel pretty good about that. But there's still more to do. That being said, let's go back in time just a little bit. So we already, we knew changes were going to happen. We got that. We have not talked since the campfire chat in tandem with then the patch, right? Um, so we get those juicy patch notes as well. The general demeanor. I'm curious what you guys took away, but when we got the most recent campfire, it felt better. I don't know, like the general demeanor of everyone felt pretty good. Like the first one that we got, like right away before the season came out, or I should say right after the season came out, was I felt more defeated. Whereas this one, it felt more jovial, and maybe it's the power of two Adams and two Joes together. Just kind of creating this perfect uh, symmetry and synergy. But it it felt good. Like I felt much more optimistic after it. It doesn't mean that, we talked before, it doesn't mean that all the problems are changed, but I don't know. I guess like seeing them be more comfortable with what they were talking about and more open, and it just seemed better. But that's me. What was your impression when we're coming off the campfire? And then we'll go into the content itself. But what did you think?
I mean, I would agree. It definitely felt more relaxed, more calm. But I mean, so time had passed since the explosion from the community, so it makes sense. And hopefully they went back and kind of. I mean, being honest, as someone who works a lot with people's like mannerisms and emotional intelligence and really like the unspoken things that come out of people, the body language just wasn't good from the team. Now, mind you, I don't blame them. I don't think it's their fault at all. I can imagine how stressful that week and that time frame was for them. But there was a noticeable difference for sure. And I'll be honest with you, new Adam, I can't remember his name.
I'm
Like I
Jackson.
want to see
Uh,
more of that guy. I
Adam
want to see,
Jackson.
definitely would like to see more of that guy. His energy, I mean, all of the team do a really good job, right? So I don't want to diminish anyone else that's been on those campfire chats, but he was really refreshing to me. His energy is, and while mind you, I didn't agree with everything he said or all of the ideas that he said. He was very direct and straightforward with the changes they wanted to make and what their design implementation was. And I know he's not the only person that put his head to that, but he spoke about it very, very well. It was really engaging. I really enjoyed him a lot. I thought he did great. But yeah, I would agree with the mood. Different feelings about the changes and stuff. I think some were really good. I think some were kind of question mark, scratch your head a little bit, and some of them were I don't think super impactful. But the mood was definitely very different and a lot better, a lot more positive. Felt like.
Yeah, no, yeah, the people are taking notes from the PR lead. They had a message where you're saying sorry and a somber note, and then a message where you're going through and talking about all the great new changes that are going through coming, so everyone's all positive and upbeat. I mean, that's how those things work. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
to be expected.
Um, I guess I hadn't even thought I was getting PR swayed. Thanks for that.
And and props to who's doing the PR because they obviously are good at their job, in order to go through and
Yep.
do it. So, but then again, I work in a movie theater. Acting's my thing. So,
There you go.
A little media training never hurt anyone, I suppose.
yeah, and just to be clear, I'm not trying to like waylay anybody. I'm pretty sure that the team did effectively take that feedback from the first video and were legitimately feeling kind of like a more somber note in order to go through and communicate the things that they did, as well then being excited to go through and talk about all the great changes that are coming to the game.
um, so most of the changes, not surprisingly, focused on two classes, sorcerer
That's not
and
true.
barbarian.
It's not true. There were more changes to Necromancer than there was to any class.
Well,
Do the math. But yeah, you're right. It was supposed to be. Supposed to be.
uh, we can talk about that two nerd words because
Not bitter
you
about it at all.
interjected pretty quickly on that one. Um, but the biggest uproar in the community has been around the barbarian and the sorcerer, predominantly the sorcerer, right? Um, it's a class that I first played this morning, and for you, Leviathan, it is August 9th.
I love
Uh,
the direct shout out every episode to give him a timestamp. It's amazing. Hi, Levi.
love you, bud. Um, so that was my first foray into the sorcerer. So I can't honestly gauge what this brought to it. I live in this great realm called the Druid, where I was looking on Maxwell today. I was like S tier, S tier, S tier, S tier. It was so many S's. Um, what am I going to do with all that? All right, that's just getting breaky. So I don't know much or enough about the sorcerer to come to an honest opinion. What I heard during it seemed logical to me, a non-sorcerer player, where I was like, "Oh, you're going to get some damage reduction. We're going to fix up some of these skills." That seems cool. But I don't play this class. Um,
Sure.
Nineball, you play this class. No, in other words, you main a sorcerer. We know that. What did they get right and what didn't they?
Well, first of all, I was being a little dramatic because Sorcerer is actually way more line items than Necromancer. But there were just a lot more changes that were more impactful in other classes than I think what the Sorcerer got. From a skill standpoint, I feel like there's so much more work that can be done from a skill standpoint, like specifically the skill tree. A lot of our changes were to legendary aspects and to Paragon boards, which were still positive and some good changes. But honestly, it's really hard to say what was right or not right without playing a lot more and testing and really messing with some things. But I have been playing the chain lightning build, right? I played this season from the jump. I've been chain lightning the whole time. I really wanted to switch to Blizzard, but I've already got a Blizzard Sork on Eternal Realm, so I'm like trying to avoid that. But Blizzard looks really good still. But I really wanted to like ride out chain lightning. I love lightning Sork in Diablo 2, so I really wanted to kind of get that feel. And while it's very different, I was still having fun with it prior to these changes, right? But I would say the most impactful changes were probably to Chain Lightning, at least from a relevancy standpoint, because Fireball and Firebolt, like there were some changes there that were not insignificant. Again, I haven't tested them, so I can't really tell you that they were or weren't. But Fireball just isn't in a good place right now as a spell. The uniques that are attached to it are really bad. And they made some changes there too. So unless like they just completely like this patch overhauled that in a way where it's really good, then cool. From what I've seen from other content creators and different sites and things like that, I've not seen any meaningful change to the meta for Sorcerer. Chain Lightning did get better. Specifically, the mana regeneration and single target damage got a lot better. I can tell you my boss damage is insane now. That feels really good. They made really impactful changes to really the way some of our things work. Like, for instance, we had an aspect that gave us mana if Chain Lightning bounced every time it bounced off of you. Now it just gives it when it bounces off of anything. So as you can imagine, you have Chain Lightning, and then you get the other aspect that gives it, makes it already bounces 5 times. You get the aspect that makes it bounce now 9 times. You
I
pretty
like
much
that
have
number.
infinite mana. Yeah, yeah, of course. So I mean, that was impactful, right? From a mana generation standpoint, like that feels a lot better. I did make that change. So with I put those aspects on. I kept my other stuff just in case, but I was testing that out, and then I switched some of my skill tree around to balance that because not really using crackling energy as much because of this. But if you look at like any of like the super meta like max roll people, things like that, the guides really haven't changed. The builds are still the same. They're not really using any of these powers at all. So I don't know if I'm just way off base or maybe they just haven't gotten to that part of it yet, right? So it's hard to know how it shifted. But
A lot of them that I've seen, like not even just like the people that write the sorcerer guides and stuff like that, but they're all like in the process of reevaluating their builds
right,
and updating them. Yeah, so I think it's still a little bit too early for anything to actually like come out. They had ideas, based on like the patch notes last week, but to their credit, it's about testing them before they
yeah.
publish any updates.
Yeah, which is makes sense, right? I haven't had time to dive in myself, and honestly, I haven't been in a big hurry. I just really wanted to dive in and see how my build felt without changing anything, and it felt fine. It felt the same. The density obviously was noticeable, and thus the XP a little bit better. So from the game standpoint, like that felt better, but from the sorcerer standpoint, like I was already doing really good damage and not having a whole lot of trouble with surviving at this point. And not because my survivability is great, but just because honestly they kind of squished everything down to where it really isn't as dangerous anymore. So it's less the buffs to Sork and more the changes to Nightmare Dungeons and the difficulty of the game overall, if that makes any sense. At least that's my hypothesis. We'll see how that shakes out. But I will say that when I did switch and test some of these new resources, I mean, like I normally use Prodigy aspect. I dropped that completely. I normally like Paragon Point into like getting an ability that makes it where when I stun enemies, I get mana back. I changed that out for more damage, things like that. And so I dropped a lot of my resource generation and just put on the ring that makes it to where, every time it bounces, it gives me mana. And I don't run out of mana at all, whether it's a boss fight, a multi-target fight, and that feels great. That feels amazing. I think that feel of it's a lot better. Does it do more damage? See, again, with the Barber, it's hard to tell because this is the season of the Barber. It's not the season of the Malignant Heart. It is the season of the Barber, right? Take the Barber away, I'm really curious to see how it's going to feel, but I don't have another one sitting in my stash right now, and I'm not willing to make that change yet. So we'll see. Overall, the game feels fine, and Sorcerer feels fine. A lot of the changes to like the Paragon boards are very small changes but can be impactful like when extrapolated over all the bonuses for your character. A lot of it's most of our changes came from the Paragon board and the legendary aspects. That's the truth. What I'm most intrigued about is really trying out. I really want Meteor to work bad because Meteor looks great in this game, and I had a lot of fun with it in various iterations of the beta. But I have not tested it yet, and I really honestly will probably roll a whole new Sork for that, and I just don't know if I want to do that just yet, right? And I might wait till season 2 and then kind of give it a run then, or wait for the hardcore min maxers to figure it out for me and let me know to spare me some time. But overall, I have not noticed a meaningful change, but the mana regeneration at least feels significantly better, and the density feels a lot better too. So we'll see how it plays out over the next few days, few weeks.
In terms of like that, coming back to it, we still have 2 months left in this
Right.
season. So
And yeah,
it's not like you're pressed for time. That has been one of the developers' comments too, like they want people to put it down. Um, I don't think they wanted to put it down that quickly, but it's not meant to be, and I would argue you've probably put more time into it than what most will during a general season. So I think you're
possible.
well within your right.
I
So,
have two max level ones and a third one at 98 right now, so maybe so.
so
But I will
yeah,
say though, I do want to say with a caveat that the change to the kiss curse mechanics is immensely positive, not just from like a how it works in game standpoint, because I'm sure it is, but also from just like a thank you, right? Like we were the only class really suffering from that, and I didn't understand it, you know. And for those that don't know, the kiss curse mechanic is that a lot of our aspects as a sorcerer, if you don't play it, would give us this really cool thing, but then like nerf some other aspect of the build, or hey, your ball lightnings now revolve around you, but they do reduce damage. Well, now they revolve around you and do increased damage, right? So that's I'm sure that that's impactful. Ball lightning has been really cool in various iterations of builds for sorcerer, so I'm like really excited to try that aspect out now too. So there's just a lot of stuff I just haven't gotten a chance to dive in and check yet, but I am very, very happy that they made that change. There is still some kiss curse mechanics in there with some other things, but it's been significantly reduced, and I think that that's positive overall. So shout out to the team, because I think that was a good change, and honestly good for the Sork community in general, because that was kind of frustrating when you look over at your Necro friends and your Rogue friends and your Druids and your Barbs. You're like, well, wait a minute, they're getting all these cool powers and they're not getting the kiss curse mechanic. Why do we get it, right? So yeah, it was good to see.
wow. I expected a little bit more cursing, and
I mean, I can tell you that I think some of these things are stupid, but they got to know something I don't know. Maybe there's something they're testing, or see the part of this build. The thing that I don't like is that they took, and they did this with every class, is they didn't really change the meta or what was strong for the classes. They just kind of buffed all these other little things, right? So like Ice Shards is still the best build for Sork, right? Chain Lightning is good, but Ice Shards, at least leading up to all this, is still the strongest in the game, and that's fine. It's a great build, but I've played it already, right? So I don't want to dive in and do that again. But there was no changes to that, right? Up or down. So it seems like they're pretty happy with where that's at, and same with the Barb, and same with other classes and stuff too, where it's mostly stayed the same. Were these enough to push them up there to be competitive or like overtake them? I don't think so. I think they're still a little under those like number one, number two builds that are really dominating. But does that really matter right now at the state of the game without leaderboards, without things like that? I don't think it does. So
Um,
at the end
I
of the
would
day, we'll see how it plays out. But overall, I think the changes were good. I'm not sure. Like, yeah, there's just some other things that I scratch your head a little bit, like, wait, why is like the unstoppable change to snow veiled aspect? Like they made it like snow veiled aspect is an aspect that makes your ice armor when you use it makes you go unstoppable. It was 2 to 3 seconds, now it's 3 to 5 seconds, and it gives you 10% bonus armor for 3 to 5 seconds. That seems really good, but like, was that a problem? Right, like I don't know if that, like, we weren't unstoppable long enough, so they want to do that. But now you have to like drop a different aspect to now start using that aspect if you're going to. So again, the balance there. So there's a lot of testing that needs to go into it, and admittedly, my time for testing and doing all that stuff was much earlier when the game launched. And it's
I
going to
think
reduce as we get closer to holiday season. So we'll
I
see.
think that is a good kind of point to go back on. If I don't think the expectation for a patch like this would be to completely shift the meta, right?
Yeah,
Um,
especially
as,
in the season. Yeah,
yeah, like week 3 of the season, but can you get the classes in a place that it doesn't feel as detrimental to be playing one over the other?
sure.
then I think that's a success, right? Where you can be like, oh, yeah, I play a sorcerer. It doesn't feel awful right now. And
Right.
from the 1 hour I spent playing it today, I still have no idea. Um, I don't I can't talk from a position of authority at all. You did make mention of the necromancer changes. Nine Ball, how are they shaken up?
Like I said, I was playing a mini necromancer, and so the majority of the changes didn't really impact anything that I'm doing. Like, I do like go and look at, like, for me, that aspect of exposed flesh, which is the lucky hit, up to 10% chance to generate 30 to 50 essence when hitting a vulnerable enemy. It used to only apply when you were using a bone skill. And so now that applying to everything, could potentially have some impact, but like as a minion necro, I don't care.
Yeah.
I have the Death Speaker's pendant, so I'm just running around spamming an infinite number of blood surges because my minions just generate a ton of essence, so I never really have to worry about generating essence anyways. Um, so I mean, there's definitely some interesting changes that are in there to kind of like go through. They did make some I wouldn't say like buffs to like the shadow build because like the empowering reaper used to like trigger is like they talked about it where you have a build that doesn't really use crit that much, but you have an ability that then triggers on a crit to then put a dot on the ground that can't crit. And so, it's just like it doesn't make sense from a design standpoint. And so they just made it a flat like proc chance. But sever builds don't even really use the aspect of the empowering reaper all that much because there are just other better things that you would use in its place. I mean, the biggest one probably, at least for me, is that they changed like a couple of the um, mob AOE attacks that did like a lot of damage through tiny ticks over a very quick amount of time. So that way, like the Balrog fire breath. If
Mm,
once you got up like really high, even though your minions can only take 30% of their life per attack, it's ticking 2, 3, 4 times a second, and so it will kind of like almost like it won't one shot, but it effectively will one shot like a whole bunch of mobs just because they're being hit for so much damage because you're trying to like push more difficult content in such a quick amount of time. So now those deal like greatly reduced damage, and I haven't really come across. I'm not like pushing or anything like that, so I've not really come across anything where I was experiencing it before. But I definitely will probably appreciate that as I start to dive back in with the new patch.
Um, I made mention of before, been playing Druid. They just made us better. There was no downside. Uh, when that pendulum swings the other way, guys, it is not gonna be fun. I've been to the top of the mountain, and it feels good. I digress. Outside of
wait,
the,
I have a question for you, Zan. You just started playing a Sork, right? What level are you?
yeah, I'm like level 9. So
Oh, okay.
I played
Thoughts
just.
so far, though,
I enjoy it. Like
compared to the other classes.
it. Hmm. It feels a little like I play everything in hardcore, right? So I'm looking at survivability. I'm just like, I don't know yet, but it feels comparable to the Necromancer right now, in what I've
Okay.
played of both, where I'm just like, oh, okay. Um, I'm keenly aware that I just don't know what I'm doing yet either, whereas I felt like I had a better handle on Necro.
I'll make it really
Like,
easy for you. Are you using Arclash?
no,
Then you're
should I
doing
be?
it wrong.
Okay,
Yep.
well, I
There
will
is no
change
other
that.
skill that matters until level 25. Use Arclash, and you'll win. That
All right,
spell is
well,
broken as hell.
I will do
At
that
early
then.
levels, it's really good.
Okay, Arclash it is. I'll be playing it probably tomorrow morning, so I will do that. I was also messing with the new Nightmare Dungeons because I wanted to test that out, and that was fun, and I think that's a nice transition. Uh, Nightmare Dungeons, right? We and really the whole game, but we got a lot more density. And I'm sure each one of you got a chance to jump in and play just at least that. I found I didn't hate Nightmare Dungeons before, right? But there are a lot of parts of them, and I think it was a common complaint, right? Where you were just trudging. And this new density feels good. Like it it feels like something is always happening, which pushes the pace along even more. And I'm really liking it. But what do you guys think?
I feel like I'm pretty on record with how I feel about Nightmare Dungeons. And I
That's
don't feel like
that's true. We know how you
I
feel, but
right.
does this version feel better than the old
Nope, it doesn't.
one? Well,
I mean,
nuts.
I've only tried it for a few hours, and it's
Double
fine.
density.
Yeah. To me, like the density is right where the density was. So okay, I think that they need to take the density and spread because like you still have gaps where there's like nothing. So that they didn't change that. They just added more where there already was stuff. So you still have those gaps of nothing. Like they need to take those groups and split them and put them in more incremental places, I believe. But I honestly don't think the problem with Nightmare Dungeons is the density. I think the problem with Nightmare Dungeons is Nightmare Dungeons. Like it's the fact that there is no other content to go do. They obviously want you in that content. Again, maybe it's because we leveled so recently. We talked about this on the last podcast, but like I found myself much more bored leveling up this time through doing Nightmare Dungeons, whereas last time I was just spamming the same dungeons. I don't know why. I know that I'm insane, but I enjoyed that more. Now I will tell you the caveat there is that there is ways to continue to spam dungeons that you want to do as Nightmare Sigils and still get those bonuses. But inevitably, when that changes, I'm gonna hate it. I like the ability to go. I want to do this dungeon, or I want to do these 5 dungeons, or these 4, whatever, right? But like, I get a sigil and it's not good. And I go craft a sigil and it's not good. You know, whatever. Like that whole process, I don't enjoy. I don't like min maxing the affixes. If barrier breakers pops up, I'm a sorcerer. It's literally in my skill tree that every time I use a cooldown, and by the way, of my 6 skills, I have 4 cooldowns. Every time I use a cooldown, I get 10% of my life as a barrier. So barrier breakers means I just take double damage the whole dungeon. It's not a good time, right? So I just don't do that one, right? And it's fine for the most part. But I think, just like I said about Mythic Pluses in World of Warcraft, I'm just not a fan of the affix system. I like the scaling difficulty. I also don't like the bounty type objectives in those dungeons, and density didn't make that any better for me, at least.
Yeah, well,
I've played maybe half a dozen Nightmare Dungeons. I haven't really
that is
experienced
enough
enough
for
of
a
the new
data set.
patch to.
I saw a Reddit post just yesterday of somebody being like, I ran one Nightmare Dungeon. This was my XP. After the patch, I ran another one. This was my XP. Clearly, this is enough data to come to a conclusion.
Yeah.
So you've done 12 times the work as that gentleman. So I would
Half
expect,
half a dozen, half a dozen.
oh, half
I've
a
done
dozen.
6 times the work. Yeah, 6 times the work.
All right. Well,
Um,
we'll allow it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, sure. You know, if it's, I guess it's like one of those ones that I'm still kind of new to this whole set of Nightmare Dungeon keys.
True.
Because as the minion build, I was kind of like struggling with Nightmare Dungeons when I first popped into World Tier 4. So I was mostly just kind of like focusing on Legion events and Hell Tides. And so I'm just now starting to go through and dip my toes into Nightmare Dungeons. So I'm still like, you could tell me that they doubled the mob density in the Nightmare Dungeon, and I didn't know what it was like before. So because I've never played any of these new ones, so. But to kind of go on like what Nerdword said, and it's like because everyone likes to go through, it's like you just kind of like repeat the same like random content, like just like greater riffs, but it's not the same. Like you like kind of like people I think reduce it down like way too much. Is like still some of the issues that I have is like kill all of the monsters, and you know there's I see some red dots on that other side of the screen, and That's the only three monsters left, and they did not teleport to me this time, which is
Yep.
unfortunate. And now I have to run all the way back over there, and then run all the way back. And I'm a Necromancer, the slowest class in the game. Um, so it's like one of those ones where it just it yeah. I like I said, I haven't played enough to get a feel for my feelings.
That is measured, and I will I will choose to respect it. I've come to conclusions as well. No, I don't have enough data, but one of the things that I want to kind of piggyback on what you brought up, Nerd Words, when it comes to like things to do at the end. I think a growing frustration has been the change in the levels right now, where
Hmm.
y- there is definitely a feel that you kind of only can do Nightmare Dungeons once the open world has completely shifted. And I feel like that's something that they need to go back on. They need to change that because what was the point of an open world if you
Yeah.
out level it?
Yeah.
Well,
And
there's just no incentive now. There's
yeah,
no incentive to go in the open world. And my favorite aspect of Diablo 4 was the PvP. I have not PvP'd once because fighting mobs that are 5 levels lower than me, with the meta being what it is and Sorks being where they are, just didn't sound like a good time, right? So,
right.
and that sucks because that was what I would break up the monotony with, right? We'd be grinding the same dungeon and it'd be like, okay, and every hour or two, be like, hey, let's go spend 30 minutes in the PvP area. That was so much fun, right? And then a Helltide would pop, you go do that, right? Which I think Helltide feels fine. I mean, it still feels the
Hmm.
same. It still scales up, which is good, and it's a nice change of pace. But with the change to Forgotten Souls, there's not even a reason to do Helltides really anymore, especially once you get enough Fiend Roses because you can just get Forgotten Souls from salvaging at this point. So it's like they really, and I don't know if it was intentional, but it does feel intentional that they just de-incentivized everything that wasn't a Nightmare Sigil.
Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree on that. And it just doesn't I I get where some people were like, oh, it's so cool to be able to go back to that lower level area and just decimate it. But that happens like once or twice, and you're just like, I have to leave here because there's nothing of value that I'm getting. Um, whereas it was nice to be able to go around the world, travel between places if you need to, and encounter something and it's going to give you something. It's going to give you XP, right? It might give you loot. There's merit in fighting something out there, whereas now it's an obstacle. There's no
Yeah.
reason to go outside of the Nightmare Dungeon because there's nothing to be gained. And I don't know. I would like to see that changed. I would love that to be reverted. And maybe it gets talked about. Like, why did we change that? Because it just doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And I think that leads to frustration. It leads to that exhaustion of like, that's the only thing I can do, right? I can only do these nightmare dungeons, and then you burn
Which is
out.
probably a little bit of perception too, right? Because you can go do that stuff. You're just
There's
it's not optimal. But let's be
right.
honest, right? We're Diablo players. We're hardcore Diablo players, and we want to be optimal, right? We don't want to feel like we're. Which, by the way,
Well,
is such a change of place when you're playing Baldur's Gate, right? Like it's
right.
such a
Yeah.
different mentality. So,
But
but
I
yeah,
will I'll give you an example. So like I'm playing hardcore. I'm obviously well behind the vast Diablo population at this point, but I've hit level 61, right? And I'm now at the point where I'm not quite ready for tier 4 because I will get trounced. But there's also like I I want to go maybe finish up my renown, but I'm not going to get anything for doing it except for a long slog. So maybe I should just stick to the Nightmare Dungeons and then focus on that for tier 4. I would rather be able to no, I'm gonna go and I'll work on that and I'll be fighting things in the open world and getting XP and things will be good. But that's not an option. Like I'm
yeah.
punished because I've leveled too much now to go and finish that up. And I feel like, as we talk about advocacy for player choice, it feels like one of those choices, and you are right. we optimize the fun out of things. But that wasn't the case 5 weeks ago, right?
It
I
wasn't.
wasn't punished for that. I could still go do it and be fine. In fact, that's what I was doing before the patch hit or before the season dropped is I was in tier three, roaming around, finishing some renown because I could. And it didn't
Yeah.
feel punitive for the level I happened to be. Um, so that would be fun. That would be just come back. Let's go back to level scaling. I liked it. I thought we all liked it. I don't know who didn't like it.
I mean,
Some very loud people on the internet.
yeah, I would say so too. Yeah, and I never had a problem
But
with the scaling before, but I honestly I think just bringing everything to a normalized level is fine. Like even if it was static and wasn't scaling, like the reason why it felt different at the beginning was because you could go do anything and it was valuable with your time. If you're doing Helltide, PvP, whatever, you still were getting the same amount of XP and levels, which was the problem. They wanted to incentivize Nightmare Essentials more. I think they should have just done that and not nerfed everything else.
Yeah, I think that is
I, I
pretty
still
fair.
think that it's like one of those ones where it's like an unintended consequence.
Yeah.
That it's you're just running what you're running into again is lack of time in order to go through and like push out updates because everyone's going through and screaming, you know, level scaling sucks. I don't feel powerful. I'm having issues. I'm increasing in levels and then the mobs are increasing in levels, so I'm doing less damage and all this other type of stuff. And so they wanted to go through and address that, but then the very heavy XP penalties start applying as the mobs drop in level below you, and
Yeah.
so it makes it so that way it's not as effective. And then that of course then just makes it so that way the doing nightmare dungeons now is exponentially more because not only do you have a bonus for fighting something that's higher level than you, the monsters are higher level, therefore they give more base experience to then be multiplied by that bonus. And then you have all of the other buffs for the various objectives and such within the nightmare dungeon itself. That's how you level your glyphs. It's how you do a whole assortment of other things. And yeah, it really is just pushing you in there. And then, but hey, the monsters don't scale. So you can feel more powerful out in the open world. I hope that we'll get to the point where they will leave it so that way that you will outscale the monsters in the open world, but then readjust experience, and experience penalties. So that way you can have that effect of fighting you get the feeling of seeing that the monsters are lower level than you, so I feel more powerful. But they up the experience that you get in order to compensate, or just remove the experience penalty, for fighting lower level monsters. So that way you're not it's not just the fact that you're getting less experience because level 75 monster does not give you as much experience as level 80 monster does. And then you just leave it at that. Just get rid of the experience penalties and such in order to help rebalance it. There should be more focus on doing certain night in-game activities like nightmare dungeons or hell tides. But it definitely feels like it's way too the shinies are over here and it outpaces everything else that you would do in the game. And it really
Yeah.
is just like the shiny is right here on Nightmare Dungeons.
In
Which we just need more things to do.
Yeah. I think there is one nice part of it, like the 1 to 50 route. What they did, they changed the areas that you couldn't go into. So at the time,
Yeah.
there were a few zones that were level 35, and you can just go anywhere now, which is awesome. Like I appreciate that, so that I don't always have to start, Kyovashad and just do fractured peaks for a bit. But once you out level it, then it just doesn't feel fun. So if that gets fixed, that would be great. And then, well, I think he had some good ideas, so maybe it happens. Um, okay, so we got a big patch. We had a big campfire chat. There's been some hot fixes. It is and Leviathan, I'm saying this date again. This is not for recording, but I'm just pointing out it's August 9th. There's still 2 months left of this season. Now, Path of Exile has this kind of cycle, just like Diablo does, where you get a new league. There's some fixes down the road, and then you start to hit a lull. Things stop getting worked on because they need to prioritize the next one. How much more iteration do you think this season will have before we hit that lull?
I don't think much. Um, I mean I feel like they're probably going to shift resources to season 2 at this point, and I don't think that's a bad call necessarily. I
Or
think we need to kind
season
of
Well,
let
three?
season
one
or well,
one
yeah,
one thing, yeah, because the one thing to point out there is that while like Joe Shelley, Joe Pecora, and such are in charge of Diablo 4 as a whole, they are on the Blizzard Irvine team, which is the one that did patch season 1, and that will be doing season 3. But
3, yeah.
season 2 is currently in full swing production over at Blizzard Albany, formerly Vicarious Visions. That so they are going through and being hard at work at developing all of that content and such.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I think that they're going to shift towards the future now. Now, they did release hot fix to yesterday, recently, like after the patch, because there were some other things that
Yeah,
kind of broke in the game.
there was
But
one earlier today too,
yeah,
I
yeah. So
believe.
they're still pushing out hot fixes, but I think from an iteration standpoint, they're probably looking more at season 3 with that team, with season 2 kind of ready to roll in the next 2 months. So I mean, like honestly, like I think that we've kind of reached what we're gonna see for this season, and that's okay. That's expected, right? Like it's seasons are supposed to be 3 months, so we kind of the game is what it is right now, and probably will be until season 2, and then we'll probably see hopefully some significant changes. And I'd really, again, like we talked about, we've kind of worn it out at this point, but I'd really like to see some changes to just the world. I honestly miss running around the world a little bit. I know the horse sucks, but like I still enjoyed the world they created. And that doesn't mean I want to do Renown again. It doesn't mean I want to do Renown again. But
Yeah.
but I do enjoy the world they created. It's a beautiful world, and it's Diablo. We've got this great landscape to go into, but I'm just going to town, clicking a button, and going in. If just give me grifts at the point, right? Just give me grifts, right? If we're gonna do that. Um, but yeah, I don't think we're gonna see much more right now.
It's fair. It just seems weird, you know, kind of a whimper. Now, we can argue, and I'm sure many have already done that Diablo is battling for eyes at the moment, and the next 2 months are going to be hard. That putting time into trying to grab that attention, after you've already had the season unveiling might be not as worth it. You're competing against Baldur's Gate and Armored Core, Starfield, and a lot of other things that maybe if you fade in the background and then come back strong with season 2, it's not the worst thing, right? Not the worst. That being said, I'm sure there are plenty of people out there that would like to see a few more things get fixed before October, because that does
Yeah.
feel a little long. Um, what are your goals with the rest of this season? You got 2 more months. What's the thing you hope you could at least check off before you finish it?
Just
Uh,
the final for me, it's the final tier of the season journey, and then I will be happy to close out season 1 of Diablo 4. And I mean, before we even get to the end, we will probably see the next season of Diablo 3.
yeah. If for me, I mean, I've kind of already. All I need to do is hit 100, and I'm a level and a half away from that. I think at this point. So, um, I may dive into Lilith, but that honestly, like, I don't want to respec for it. So if Chain Lightning's not going to be a viable option to take down Uber Lilith, then I'm not worried about it. My other goals would be do as much as I can in Baldur's Gate 3, kick the shit out of Starfield, start my new 2K when it comes out. So thank you, Diablo, for the lull, because give me time to do some other things. I will say though that this is kind of the problem with having a season so quick to the start of the launch of the game. This is why I think they should have had a few more months, probably 5 to 6 months before they even started about seasons, because I think they needed to figure out what the game looked like from a service standpoint before they started launching these seasons and then kind of handcuffing themselves from making changes mid-season. I'm glad to see they made the changes they did, but yeah, it's going to give me time to do some other things. That's for sure.
which is a weird spot to be in on this Diablo podcast. Don't worry, guys, we're not going anywhere. Um, I think it is kind of funny though. Like, so we've been at this for a while, right? This is the 1 year episode, but we've been talking about Diablo for over a decade. Um, I guess like I see on Reddit and stuff like that, like more doom and gloom about the franchise or about the game itself. I'm not worried at all. Like, have there been missteps? Yeah. Could things be better? Absolutely. Am I asking myself easy questions to sound smart? Totally. But it's a trap I fall into. I'm sorry. But like we've seen it. Like we've seen it in Diablo 3. Like go back to what Diablo 3 was. It didn't launch great and it shaped up. Even Diablo 2, like this is like for all the like the old school, like Diablo 2 when it came out was a great game, but it wasn't amazing. Um like Diablo 4 reminds me a lot of Diablo 2 when it came out, where you got to the end game, you're just like, what am I supposed to do? What am I hunting for? What I need like a really nice rare pike, and that's it. That's kind and then Lord of Destruction comes. Now I'm not saying or excusing that the developers can just be like, oh, we'll make everything better in expansion. I don't think people's attention span works that way anymore. But I feel like the base is there. I feel like all the elements are there for this game to really, really work. It just needs some iteration. Um, and I'm hoping season 2 is the start of that. Like, let's see what that looks like. Um,
I've put hundreds, and I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of hours into Diablo 4 already. Um, I think the game's fine, right? It's really good. It's just at some point when you've played that much of the game, you kind of got to take a step back for a second and just say, what is my goal here? What am I doing? And I'm not interested in the Lilith fight, and Nightmare Sigils are boring for me. So I'll circle back. I'll jump in and play probably a little bit every day, every week. But there's no point in rushing or racing. There's no leaderboard. There's no, so for me, it's just continue to learn the game. Will evolve. I'm sure in 6 months, our thinking on a lot of these things with the game are going to change drastically, just like they did with Diablo 2 and Diablo 3. I'm really
Yep.
excited to see what the new Diablo 3 season looks like too, by the way, because I'm definitely going to dive into that when it jumps. Hell, I'm excited for the new Diablo 2 ladder, which should be popping any minute now, right? They could announce that last minute any second. So I'll probably jump into both of those, but yeah, I'm not by any means doom and gloom or upset with Diablo 4. This is the problem when you have a 3 month cycle on seasons, right? You eventually hit a wall where it's like, okay, well, what's I mean, I can go level alts, but I mean, I'm not really in a rush to do that. I'm going to play some of the stuff that I can dive into, and that way I'm really ready to go for season 2, continue to learn and just grow our understanding of the game. I think the game's great, and I've definitely gotten my money's worth out of it, and I'm not by any means done, but yeah, I don't think it's doom and gloom on my side at least.
The problem is in the correct area. Core gameplay loops, the actual mechanics, and the way that the game itself is all fit together, all great, all stellar. We've got a great working platform. The issue is just kind of like it lacks depth at the end of it. So, like
Yep.
Nerdwords is saying, game is great for like 100 hours, and then it starts to show some flaws like 100 hours in, because you're kind of like, okay, am I going to be doing the same thing for the next 100 hours? And then it's just like you have to kind of like reevaluate that. What else? Like, okay, it's kind of lost its shine. I'm gonna find something else to do until like season comes through. I will definitely agree with what Nerdword said, that probably needed a little bit more than just three. Like the month that we got before the game launched. That we needed a little bit more space, because even though that the new patch is out, a couple of my friends that said they were waiting for the patch, like Now they've got Baldur's Gate. Like
Yeah.
they were so burnt out on the 100 grind that they barely touched the season, and now there's a new shiny in front of them. Despite any changes that they made to any of the barbarian or the sorcerer that they might have been playing and such. And so maybe season 2 will be able to go through and catch them and bring them back in. But it definitely was just the timing of everything. And but like I was saying earlier, it's better to have the issue on the lack of depth or content because they can make more of that. Which is I'm sure that they're working on now. But if the core like gameplay loops and stuff like that weren't good and the mechanics weren't fun and such, that would be a much more significant issue to be having to change like core gameplay elements of the game. So
I will say, because you just sparked something in my head, Nineball, that the one thing they could do that would really expand the amount. Like I know when I get home from work, right, I'm sitting there thinking like, what am I going to play? Um, for it to be absolutely Diablo 4, there's one change that they could make that would make that happen. That Diablo 2 and Diablo 3 had, that even with a lack of end game systems when those games launched, it still had this to look forward to, and that was the item chase and the economy building, right? Diablo 2, find items, you trade them to build your account economy. Diablo 3, you had the auction house, you could trade it on the auction house, sell it even for real money, whatever, to build the economy. In Diablo 4, make it to where I can trade aspects, not legendaries, just aspects. If I could trade legendary aspects to other players along with rares, that significantly changes the amount that I'm going to want to grind to find other aspects, right? Because once I get them and I've got them equipped pretty good, right? I'm not really interested in the 0.1% upgrade, but if I could go find like a super badass aspect and jump on, even though there's no in-game system for it, right? Just go jump on a forum and trade with people, or get on Discord and interact with people and trade that way. That would be really cool. I would love to see them implement some sort of tradings with legendaries aspects and uniques, but at least an extracted aspect, being able to trade that would be really really cool. And I found myself wanting to do that in several instances when I'm playing with friends or by myself.
It kind of harks back to, I mean, last time we talked about Uber uniques and uniques in general, um, that finding them is not as big of a gift as it once was in previous games. Because even if I can't use it or I don't want to use it, I can't do anything with it, right? Um, as a druid, finding a few like Tempest Roar is the one that comes up. Being able to find that would be amazing, but you're just waiting on RNG, and sometimes when you wait too long, it doesn't feel good. Whereas if I had that option to be able to trade something to get the thing I wanted, and then now I got time to play with it. Right? If you go on Reddit now, there's a bunch of posts of people getting their Tempest Roar at level 98, right? Like I've
Mhm.
got two more levels to enjoy it, as opposed to being able to take it for much longer and to truly play that build, that you wanted. Um, that's a conversation almost for a different day. Like I think
Yeah,
I think we can do a podcast on just itemization, just itemization, um, or endgame. I think we still have plenty to talk about, especially during a lull. Um, it'll be easier because I won't have to pry you guys out of the game every time.
You got 2 weeks
I
until
know.
Armored Core, so
I'm aware.
yeah,
Uh,
if we're recording that week, that will be.
August 25th will be the next Diablo podcast.
the
Uh,
Nightball just be playing in the background while we're recording. So
Yeah, August 25th will be the next Diablo podcast with you,
right.
Nerdwords, and someone
Somebody
else.
else. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair. Um, all right, gentlemen. Any last thoughts? We did not cover one thing, and I don't think we need to make too much of it, but there was one small issue, and that was
small
uh,
issue.
I think maybe it's kind of fun to end on this because it's just funny. There was an issue in which Eternal Realm characters were able to cross on over to seasonal and exchange items and goods and vice versa for, correct me if I'm wrong, about a day. about a day this
No, it
was
was longer than
was it a
that.
little bit longer,
It was a lot longer than that. It got found out and it got shut down quick,
but
but
it was going
people were
on the
doing
whole,
it
yeah.
from the
Uh,
jump of season one.
so in a game that doesn't truly have an economy, is it a big deal? No. Does it give some people an unfair advantage? Sure, but there wasn't a competition.
Right.
Uh, it- if
I
you
think I
bet,
think also I think the funnier one is the reverse, where the Eternal Realm characters were taking the hearts back with
right?
them,
Yes. Yep.
and then like the barbarian with 14 malignant hearts equipped.
Yeah.
Yes,
That was
that was the
nuts.
other issue is that the Malignant Hearts could kind of go anywhere on Eternal Realm, um, which hey, that's interesting. Um,
Yeah,
I might be more interested in Hearts, I guess,
I
but
will say once it became like widely known a bit better, they fixed it quick, which is
yeah,
good. And obviously they did not intend for that to happen. There's something again, like we talked about, code is magic, right? So something
yeah.
broke somewhere, and you had to really like. I want to know how someone figured that out because like I'm not gonna talk about the method, but the method was pretty fucking convoluted, right? So like it's not like you could just like very easily do something. You had to do some very specific actions to make it happen. Um, yeah, so glad they fixed it. And supposedly, obviously, I don't know how true it is because seen on Reddit, but there have been a lot of bans that have gone out from it. But I've seen nothing publicly from the Diablo team, so I don't know how legitimate that is. But
Well, the Diablo team themselves, they never publish they never publish account actions or anything like that. Anytime that
yeah,
you hear like the ban waves in Diablo 2 or Diablo 3, it's always from the people. It's always from the community seeing the people get banned and talk about it. Blizzard themselves never acknowledges that there was like a ban wave or anything like that.
yeah, for sure. I do also want to say though, before we wrap up, the hotfix today was pretty impactful. We should probably bring that up. Wrathful Hearts and Invokers got significant buffs to their drop rates, so you should be seeing a lot more of those now, which is good because no one gives a shit about the rest of them, right? It's really about the barber, and it's just
well, you can
everyone
only have
in the
one barber,
world.
so you need the
And
other
in the
two.
in the
Yeah,
in the in the Cursora,
yeah,
in,
and
in the in
well,
the
if you're a
curse in the
necro, it's
Cursora.
different. You got a little
Yeah.
more options there, right? If I could use the cursor, that'd be fantastic. However, I can't. So, but barber, yeah, is you can find more of them now. Now, mind you, I played for about 3 or 4 hours today, and I did probably I mean, I just did nightmare sigil after nightmare sigil after nightmare sigil, and I didn't find any wrathfuls in that time. But I wasn't doing
But
tunnels at all, so yeah.
and they increase the chance of like crafting the Wrathful Invokers. Um,
Oh,
so
see, I didn't catch that, so I need to. I have all these resources built up that I haven't used, so I should probably go try that then.
yeah,
Okay,
so go in there
good to know.
and do, the random evoker and your chance of getting one is significantly increased. So that is fun. If you're still engaging with the season mechanic, if you haven't pulled a barber yet, then well, you can now. Hopefully. RNG is still RNG, unfortunately. Just because they buff it doesn't mean that you get one for free. So yeah.
True.
I found a great feast.
Ah, look at you.
It's not good. It says
No,
multiplicative, it's additive. Yeah.
well, he can't win them all. Uh,
And
all right,
despite the essence drain, I still have like unlimited essence once I've engaged with mobs, so it's fun. Yeah.
all right. Anything else?
Nope, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, before we close out, once again, thanks to everybody for listening for this year, and for anybody who has just joined us and you missed some of the older, I don't want to say crummier episodes, but the quality not up to par. And again, we're still fixing it, but like thank you to everybody listening. Thank you, Nerdwords. Thank you, Nineball, for coming. Um, shout out to everybody else who's joined us along the way. And let's keep doing it. Let's keep bringing in cool people to talk to. Let's keep chatting about Diablo, and let's see where the game goes from here. And, let's close it out as we always do with a moo, moo, moo.
Moo.
Moo moo moo.